think it's just really important, again, to reflect on how immensely needed it is right now for humanistic paradigms of spirituality that people can engage with, whether they're suffering or not, that is an alternative to this such a popular movement towards these older models of Eastern spirituality that are repackaged as something new, whether that's neo-Advaita, but this whole idea that the truth that's going to set you free, follow these pointers to have X, Y, and Z realizations about the ultimate truth of reality that are nihilistic and anti-ego and anti-individual, but paradigms that can, as what you're doing, is rescuing the ego, redeeming the individual. And so for what I'm doing, which I sometimes call, and I have a support group that's called Collective Soul Revival, people who want to move away from these negation-based non-dual paradigms, whether it's because they've only been damaged by them, which we now know is a huge widespread thing, or like myself, experienced radical shifts and found them immensely positive up until a certain point, until the dark side showed itself and this double-edged sword, and then this sort of, fuck, what do I do now? Is it possible to re-embrace the self in some way without going back to sleep, if you will? But people who are looking for a way to feel real again in a world that feels real. So in a way to resurrect the reality of all dimensions of reality and humanity in a way that actually celebrates and makes our individual existence something precious and
beautifully put,
profound.
Yeah, celebrate. And it is precious. It's the big turning point for me was having a daughter, and just like seeing that individuality and just how precious. And so if we can really see that in each other, this feels, yeah, this is the sort of spirituality we want to take us forward.
And you, something that has always been so unique to you is, even though you were teaching, if you will, let's say when you wrote Lucid Living, for example, you were inspired by Data and these non-dual perspectives, but you were always saying something that no one else was saying, which was, and the individual matters, and this dream character is important, and life is something beautiful to fully participate in, which set you apart, of course, from everyone at Sand when you went. And that was what drew me to you, because this was something extraordinary and stunning and like heretical in a way, if that's a word, heretical, I don't know, heresy. That I had been immersed in this view that, yes, it's all a dream, and it's a dream we should escape. It's a dream that we should detach from. And this character of you is something that's false, something that needs to be renounced or disidentified with, or at the worst, completely killed off and destroyed. So then you come along with this book, Lucid Living, that starts with something like, "Psst, wake up, you're dreaming." And you were presenting this view of, oh, maybe this doesn't have to be nihilistic and based on detachment. Maybe I can actually harness this view of life being a lucid dream within my awareness as inspiration to self-author my life and to be involved in it and participate in it. And so there were like these stepping stones that led me to where I am now, which is that reality is not a dream, and it's worth participating in. And there's oneness, and we're precious individuals at the same time. And so following, what's just fascinating is all the shifts that you made from Lucid Living, which is where I started off with you, to where you are now, where you're also saying, reality is not just a dream. So it could be interesting maybe to start at Lucid Living. As you said, this was inspired by Nisargadatta, where the core idea, maybe you want to say it, is that reality is an appearance within consciousness.
Yeah. And Nisargadatta was a big influence because he seemed at the time very clear. He doesn't now, but but there were lots, and I mean, and it's a perennial image. You go right back and right back. The Gnostics use it, all sorts use it, Sufis use it. And for me, it was a way of resolving the very tension you're talking about. Was I had a very powerful feeling that the individual was significant,
Mhm.
and yet I wanted to combine it with this experience I was having of profound oneness and love, and how do these fit together? And I had the vocabulary of the perennial philosophy with which to work, and therefore just homed in on the dream image to go, oh, look, like a dream, you're in it, and yet from a deeper perspective, it's in you, and
Mhm.
you're there. So there's one dreamer dreaming itself to be everyone, and it was a way of capturing the mythos of the perennial philosophy in a way that I could make the dream positive. And that was important to me because for me it's always been about love, and that's where the love is. But eventually it broke down, and I got it. The way it seems to me increasingly is I was able to express the essential ideas that I've been exploring for decades, eventually so clearly that I could see what was wrong with them.
Right.
And that's what led me to go, okay, you've got to revise this considerably. And that was a huge wrench because I'd got very good at not only writing and talking about it, but it was very simple and clear. And I could give people experiential shifts. And it wasn't a negative thing. It was a positive shift into love. So it was a very positive thing. I developed it. I was good at it. The only problem was I think it's wrong.
Yes.
So that meant, okay.
And when we talk about what's wrong with it, or let's say the drawbacks to it, I will say that there's more than just that. And I don't think that you maybe particularly experienced it in the way that you specifically taught it. But what that perspective came with for me, as much as it redeemed participating and was inspiring me to engage in reality again, interpersonally, it's still at the end of the day had the tendency to lead to solipsism. And
If you actually follow through, that's one of the problems with it. If you follow through, it is solipsistic. And there was always a moment in the whole journey that I took people on and went on myself, where it reached that point where you kind of don't mention
right,
that. Somehow that doesn't quite work, but we'll move over it. And because if you're ultimately going, what you know is your experience right now, if that's where you're starting and ending, which is what I was doing, then that's solipsism. There's no way around it. And yeah, that's totally unsatisfactory. And then also, it's a dream. Okay, what are you trying to say with that? Really, it's a dream. It's like,
yeah,
is it? Because when I look at my dreams, they're full of images. What does it? What is it? An echo of? And you're asking an awful big jump to go. This all exists in some super consciousness. And increasingly there's other reasons it was wrong, but increasingly there was better ways to understand it. I was going, look, Tim and Jessica are dream characters within God's dream, essentially. So it's a revamped version of the ancient myth of the dream of Brahman, the dream of God, and that does work in a mythic context.
right.
But if you push it, if you want to get rid of the mythicism from it, if you ask difficult questions, then you've got a hell of a lot of problems on your hands.